Have you ever noticed that right before something good was about to happen in your life, everything seemed to fall apart? First, think about it for a moment. The job came after the rejection. The clarity came after the confusion. The strength came after the night you almost gave up. You probably called it bad luck or bad timing. Or maybe you blamed yourself. But what if none of it was random? What if there's a pattern hidden inside the chaos, a kind of test that shows up quietly, disguised as frustration, delay, or loss, right before your entire reality is about to shift? I'm not talking about superstition. I'm talking about something far more interesting. Something that touches physics, the mind, and the way reality seems to respond to who we're becoming. Because here's what most people never realize. The universe doesn't hand you a new life. It asks you a question first. And the way you answer, without even knowing you're being asked, decides everything. Tonight, we're going to talk about that question. The test before the change. The silence before the shift. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, you may understand exactly what's been happening to you lately. Let's start with something uncomfortable but true. Most of us spend our lives waiting for proof before we're willing to change. We say, "Show me it'll work, and then I'll believe." We want the evidence first, the guarantee, the sign, and then, only then, we'll move. But life rarely works in that order, and neither, it seems, does reality itself. There's an idea in quantum physics that has fascinated thinkers for nearly a century. It's often called the observer effect. In simple terms, certain experiments showed that the act of observing a particle appeared to change how it behaved. Before it was measured, it existed in a kind of cloud of possibility. After observation, it settled into one definite state. Now, I want to be careful here. Physicists argue about what this really means, and I'm not going to pretend it proves anything about your morning commute or your relationships. But there's something in that idea worth sitting with. Something almost poetic. That the observer is not separate from what's observed. That attention shapes outcome. That something has to be witnessed, expected, held in focus before it becomes real. And isn't that strangely close to how transformation feels in a human life? Think about the last time you truly changed. Not a small habit, a real change. The kind where you became in some quiet way a different person than you were before. I had bet it didn't happen because the conditions were perfect. It happened because something in you decided to hold a new reality in focus, even when the old one was still all around you. You started observing yourself differently. And slowly, almost invisibly, your behavior, your choices, your responses began to organize around that new image. This is where neuroscience walks in and quietly nods. Your brain is not a fixed structure. For most of history, people assumed the adult brain was basically finished, set, hardwired, unchangeable. We now know that's wrong. The brain reshapes itself. So, why does it work this way? Why does the friction come first? Why does it seem like reality demands something from us before it gives? I've thought about this for a long time, and I want to offer you a way of seeing it that isn't mystical, but isn't cold, either. Something in between. Something human. Imagine that who you are right now, your identity, is not just a story in your head. It's a pattern. A pattern of thoughts, yes, but also of emotions, of chemistry, of habit. Your body has a baseline it knows how to produce. The same stress, the same comfort, the same low hum of familiarity. Neuroscience suggests we become, in a sense, addicted to our own emotional states. Not because we enjoy them, but because they're known. The body craves the predictable, even when the predictable is suffering. This why people return to situations that hurt them. Why someone leaves one difficult relationship and walks straight into another that rhymes with it. Why the lottery winner often ends up, within a few years, financially back where they started. The external situation changed, but the internal pattern didn't. And the pattern, like water, finds its old level again. So, now picture what has to happen for your reality to genuinely change. The pattern has to break. And the pattern does not break gently. It doesn't dissolve with a nice affirmation while everything stays comfortable. It breaks under pressure. It breaks when life applies enough force that the old structure can no longer hold its shape. That pressure, that's the test. It feels like loss because something is, in fact, being lost. The old version of you is being asked to die a little. The identity that was built on fear, on smallness, on the need to be liked, on the certainty that you don't deserve more, that identity does not go quietly. It fights. It generates anxiety, doubt, the urge to quit. It floods you with reasons to go back. And from the inside, this feels like falling apart. But what if falling apart and breaking open are the same event seen from two different angles? There's an old idea found in many traditions that you cannot pour new wine into old containers. The container has to change first. And the changing of the container is never comfortable because the container is you. I think this is why so many people, looking back on the hardest seasons of their lives, say something strange. They say, I wouldn't go back and remove it even if I could. Not because the pain was good. Pain isn't good. But because the breaking was the only thing that made room for who they became. The divorce that ended a life they were quietly dying inside of. The diagnosis that finally made them stop sleepwalking. The failure that stripped away the false self they'd been performing for decades. None of it felt like a gift in the moment. All of it felt like the universe testing whether they would survive. And the ones who came through didn't come through by being stronger than everyone else. They came through by stopping the fight against the breaking. By letting the old pattern fall instead of clutching it. By trusting without proof that what was collapsing was supposed to collapse. This is the part no one can do for you. This is the threshold only you can cross. Because here's the quiet truth underneath all of it. The test is never really about the circumstance. The lost job, the ended relationship, the closed door. Those are just the stage. The actual test is happening inside you in the place where you decide what the difficulty means. Two people can face the exact same loss. One contracts and confirms an old story, see, nothing ever works for me. The other stays open and asks a different question, what is this making room for same event, two entirely different realities branching from a single inner choice. And that choice, repeated day after day in small invisible moments, is what slowly bends the trajectory of a life. You are choosing your reality right now. Not by controlling what happens, but by deciding who you'll be while it happens. Let's slow down here because I want to talk about waiting. There's a particular kind of suffering that comes not from the test itself, but from the space after it. The part where you've made the inner choice, you've stayed open, you've done the hard internal work, and nothing has changed yet. You've stopped contracting. You're holding the new vision. You're showing up differently. And still, the phone doesn't ring. The opportunity doesn't appear. The reality you can feel coming refuses to arrive on your schedule. This is where most people break. Not at the moment of crisis. Humans are surprisingly good at crisis. We break in the waiting, in the gap, in the long silent middle where faith has no evidence to lean on. And I think this is the most misunderstood part of the whole process. Because we've been taught to read delay as denial. We assume that if it hasn't happened, it isn't going to. We treat the silence as an answer. But the silence isn't a no. The silence is the space where the pattern is still reorganizing, where the new neural pathways are still being laid down, where the new identity is still stabilizing, where you are quietly becoming the person who can actually hold what you've been asking for. Because here's something worth considering. Maybe reality doesn't withhold things from us to punish us. Maybe it withholds until we've become capable of keeping them. A version of you that hasn't broken the old pattern would receive the new life and lose it. Would pour the new wine into the old container and watch it crack. The waiting isn't cruelty. It's preparation. And in that waiting, there's a practice. A quiet, unglamorous practice of continuing to observe the possibility when there's nothing to confirm it. Of getting up each day and choosing the open posture again. Of feeling the doubt and not letting it close your hands. I want to pause right here and ask something of you. If any of this is landing, if you felt this in your own life, this strange order of breaking before building, of test before change, I'd love for you to write something in the comments. Just 5 words. A simple affirmative sentence you can return to. Write this: I am becoming who I'm meant to be. That's it. 5 words. Leave it in the comments below. Not for me, for you. Because there's something that happens when you put a thing into words and release it where others can see it. It stops being a wish and starts being a direction. And when you scroll past someone else who wrote the same thing, you'll realize you're not walking through this alone. Thousands of people are standing in their own waiting right now, holding their own quiet faith. You're part of something larger than your single story. Now, back to the waiting. The thing about the gap is that it has a texture. It tests you in a different way than the crisis did. The crisis tested your courage. The gap tests your trust. And trust is harder because it has no drama to feed on. It's just you, day after day, choosing to believe in something you cannot yet see. There's a word for this that we've almost lost. Faith. Not religious faith, necessarily, though it can be. I mean the older, simpler meaning. The capacity to act as if something is real before it is proven itself. To plant a seed and water ground that shows no green for weeks. Every farmer understands this. No one stands over freshly planted soil at dawn demanding to see the harvest. The waiting is built into the design. The seed needs darkness and time. And the worst thing you could do is dig it up every morning to check if it's growing. But that's exactly what we do with our lives. We dig up the seed. We check. We measure. We despair at the bare soil and call it failure. The test in the gap is to stop digging. To leave the seed in the dark and trust the process you can't observe. And I know how hard that is when you're tired, when you've been waiting longer than feels fair, when the doubt has a voice that sounds just like your own. But the green always comes after the dark. Never before it. That's not poetry. That's just how growth works. I want to talk now about the part of you that's been running the whole show without your permission. Most of what governs your life isn't conscious. The decisions you think you're making freely are often being shaped by patterns that were set long before you had any say in them. Psychologists estimate that an enormous portion of our daily behavior runs on automatic programs, beliefs, and reactions installed in childhood, absorbed from the people around us, rehearsed so many times that they no longer feel like programming. They feel like us. Like simply the way I am. But you weren't born believing you weren't enough. Someone somewhere taught you that, maybe without meaning to. You weren't born afraid of being seen, afraid of wanting too much, afraid of taking up space. You learned it. And what was learned can, with enormous effort and patience, be unlearned. This where the test gets personal, because when reality pushes back against your growth, it doesn't push on your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is on board. Your conscious mind wants the change. The push lands on the subconscious, on the old programming. And the old programming fights to survive the way any living thing fights to survive. That's why you can decide, with total sincerity, to change your life on Monday, and find yourself doing the exact opposite by Wednesday. It's not a lack of willpower. It's that willpower is a small conscious force trying to override a vast subconscious current. And the current usually wins, unless you do something different. Jung pointed at this when he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Read that slowly, you will call it fate. All those things you think are just happening to you, the same kind of relationship, the same kind of conflict, the same self-sabotage right before success, they may not be fate at all. They may be the unconscious pattern running on schedule, generating the same reality again and again, while you stand there bewildered, asking why this keeps happening to you. The test, then, is partly an invitation to stop calling it fate, to turn around and look at the pattern directly, to ask the uncomfortable question, what part of me keeps choosing this? Not to blame yourself, never that. The pattern wasn't your fault, but it is now your responsibility, because you're the only one who can see it from the inside. And the moment you see it, really see it, not as an idea, but as a lived recognition, something loosens. The pattern loses a little of its grip the instant it's brought into the light. That's the strange mercy of awareness. You don't have to fight the unconscious into submission. You have to make it conscious, and consciousness itself begins the dissolving. This is why the difficult season is so important. Comfort keeps the unconscious hidden. When life is easy, the patterns run silently in the background, and we never have to look at them. It's the pressure, the test, that drags them up to the surface where we can finally see them. So, the loss that exposed your fear of abandonment, the failure that revealed how much of your worth you'd tied to achievement, the conflict that showed you the anger you'd been swallowing for 30 years, these weren't just problems, they were revelations. The unconscious, forced into the light by pressure, finally showing you what's been steering. And once you can see it, you're no longer fully ruled by it. That's the quiet revolution. Not becoming a perfect person, just becoming a conscious one. Someone who catches the old pattern mid-motion, and for the first time chooses differently. Not every time. You'll fail often, but each conscious choice cuts a new groove, and slowly the automatic life becomes a chosen one. This is what it actually means to change your reality. Not magic, not force. Awareness applied patiently to the parts of yourself you spent a lifetime not looking at. The universe isn't testing whether you're worthy, it's testing whether you're willing to look. I want to step out of the ideas for just a moment and speak to you directly. If you've made it this far, if you're still here, still listening, I have a feeling I know something about you. You're probably someone who's lived a good portion of life already. You've had the wins and the losses. You've built things and watched some of them fall. You've reached an age where the easy answers don't satisfy you anymore, where the motivational noise sounds hollow, where you've stopped wanting to be hyped up and started wanting to be told the truth. You've buried people. You've held things together when no one knew how tired you were. You've had seasons where you quietly wondered if the best part was already behind you. And maybe that's exactly why this is reaching you now. Because everything I'm describing, the test, the breaking, the waiting, the turning toward what you avoided, none of it is a young person's game. It takes a certain amount of life behind you to even understand it. The young hear everything happens for a reason and roll their eyes. You hear it and you know it's more complicated than that, and also, somehow, more true. So, if part of you has been wondering whether it's too late, whether transformation is for other people, younger people, people whose patterns haven't set as deep as yours, I want to gently put that down for you. The brain rewires at every age. The research is clear on this. There is no expiration date on neuroplasticity. The person who changes their life at 60 is not doing something less real than the person who changes it at 30. If anything, they're doing something harder and more honest because they're doing it with full knowledge of what's at stake. You are not too late. You're right on time. You're just finally ready to hear it. Now, let me bring us back because there's one more layer I want to reach before we close. We've talked about the test as something that breaks the old pattern. We've talked about the waiting, the unconscious, the choice between contracting and staying open. But underneath all of it, there's a deeper question I've been circling, and I think you can feel it coming. Who is the one being tested? Not your circumstances, not your personality with all its old programming. Something beneath that. The part of you that's been watching your whole life unfold. The observer behind the thoughts. The awareness that was there when you were 5 and is still here now, unchanged, while everything else about you transformed. That part of you was never broken by any of it. The losses happened. The failures happened. The fear happened. And something in you witnessed all of it and remained whole. And maybe that's what the test is really pointing toward. Not just a better life. A remembering of what in you was never actually at risk. So, let's bring it home. We started with a simple observation that things often fall apart right before they come together. And we've spent this hour turning that observation over, looking at it through physics, through the brain, through the mind's hidden patterns, through the oldest human wisdom about breaking and becoming. And here's where it all converges. The universe doesn't test you because it's cruel. It tests you because change has a structure. And that structure requires a threshold. The old pattern has to be pressured before it breaks. The unconscious has to be exposed before it can be chosen against. The seed has to sit in the dark before it grows. And you, the real you, the one watching all of it, has to remember that you were never the pattern in the first place. You were always the one with the power to observe it and to choose again. That's the shift. It was never about forcing reality to give you something. It was about becoming someone reality could finally meet differently. And I think you already feel where you are in this. You know whether you're in the breaking or the waiting or the quiet beginning of the green. You've known the whole time. You just needed someone to name the shape of it so you could stop fighting the very thing that's trying to deliver you. For those of you who feel something stirring here, who sense there's more underneath these ideas and want to go further into how consciousness, perception, and reality actually interweave, I put everything I've come to understand into a book called Awaken Your Quantum Shift. It goes much deeper than we could go tonight. The link is in the first pinned comment if and when it feels like the right moment for you. No rush. You'll know if it's yours. But before you go anywhere, sit with this. Everything you've been through, every test you didn't understand while you were inside it, was teaching you the same single lesson over and over in different costumes. That you are not what happens to you. You are the one who chooses what it means. The job that fell through, the love that ended, the version of you that had to die so this one could be here listening. None of it was the punishment you thought it was. It was the question. And you've been answering it all along in every quiet moment you chose to stay open instead of closing. So the next time everything seems to fall apart right when you thought it was finally coming together, you'll know. You'll know what's really being asked. And you'll know who's being asked it. If this reached something real in you, do two things. Follow the channel so the next conversation finds you when you need it. And share this with 5 people. Not everyone, just the 5 who came to mind while you were listening. They came to mind for a reason. And then leave me a comment. Something honest. Tell me where you are in your own test right now. And tell me what you want the next video to be about because this is a conversation and I'm listening. I'll see you in the next one.